Vergangenes Wochenende gab US-Präsident Joe Biden bekannt, nicht erneut kandidieren zu wollen. Stattdessen schlug er US-Vizepräsidentin Kamala Harris als Präsidentschaftskandidatin für die Demokraten vor. Dieser Schritt erfolgte nach einer massiven Kampagne gegen Biden, um den Platz freizuräumen. Offenbar hatte das auch mit der Angst der Demokraten vor einem erdrutschartigen Wahlsieg der Republikaner und ihrem Kandidaten Donald Trump zu tun. Wie bewertest du Bidens Entscheidung? Hat er sie selbst getroffen oder wurde sie für ihn getroffen? Und ist Kamala Harris eine geeignete Kandidatin, um US-Präsidentin zu werden?
Well, I mean, I can't speak to the final moments of the decision and whatever processes were there. We do know that Joe Biden had made it very clear that he intended to stay the course, that he was the candidate. He had won a primary. He was the choice of the Democratic Party, of the 15 million people who participated in the primary election process. And then he changed his mind. He wouldn't have done that without the pressure being put on him. And now what we have is a candidate for the presidency of the United States who has been selected, not elected. This is not what democracy is about. This is the worst possible process to pick someone to run the country. And it seems to be a very coordinated effort. We had a candidate, Joe Biden, who had zero popularity. He was fading fast. It was going to be a landslide victory for the Republicans, not just of the presidency, but of the House and the Senate. Or was it? Because this is the interesting part. Donald Trump on his best day can only secure a certain amount of the Republican base. He wasn't running away with this election. It was still a very close held affair. But suddenly the media started interpreting everything as a landslide victory, Trump's going to win everything. They're going to lose the House, lose the Senate. It just seems too orchestrated, too slick. This was a coordinated effort between the Democratic Party establishment, the American establishment, the deep state, if you want to call it, the media. We're putting together a narrative that was designed to boost Kamala Harris. And look, immediately, this is a woman who was booted out of the Democratic primary early in the 2020 election cycle. She's not popular. Nobody likes her. She's not a very good politician. She has zero skill set, zero resume. She has zero charisma. There's nothing about her that's attractive. This was known for the entire Biden presidency, and suddenly she's the greatest thing since sliced bread. I mean, she's filling the auditorium. I just want to remind people that was 3,000 handpicked people brought in as part of this hyped up situation. She hasn't filled anything. She has an instant social media presence. She's now a brat, apparently, whatever that means. She has Hollywood falling over themselves to provide their endorsements. And then that's it. She's still the same Kamala Harris that existed before all of this this social media and media-driven drama. Unqualified, not very good, not very charismatic, not very competent. And the worst part of all this is she hasn't been elected by anybody when it comes to this national office. She has been selected. They're trying to pump her up. That's not what democracy is about. If Joe Biden had kept his promise, which was made when he ran for office in 2020, that he was a one-term president and that he would use this term to, quote unquote, save American democracy and then hand the baton off to the next generation, which was Kamala Harris, because he picked her. That's his vice president. That's who he's supposed to hand it off to. He would have had to have gone through a Democratic primary process, and she would have failed. And it would have been horribly embarrassing for the Democrats to have Joe Biden's vice presidential candidate drop out of the primary in the first round because nobody likes her. Nobody wants her. She's not good at what she does. So instead, they've carried out what is in effect a soft coup. to push Biden aside, put Kamala Harris in the will of the people be damned.
Die US-Öffentlichkeit und auch die ganze Welt wartet seit dem letzten Wochenende auf eine Äußerung von Biden zu seinem Rücktritt von der Kandidatur. Doch es gab tagelang keine Bilder oder Videos von ihm. Der US-Präsident schien mehrere Tage völlig von der Bildfläche verschwunden zu sein. Angeblich mit einer Covid-Infektion. Das befeuert die Debatte darum, ob Biden überhaupt noch in der Lage ist, die USA zu regieren und auch als Oberbefehlshaber des US-Militärs zu fungieren. Führende Republikaner sorgen sich vor allem darum, wer gerade die Kontrolle über die US-Atomwaffen hat. Was ist los mit Joe Biden? Ist es üblich, dass ein US-Präsident tagelang nicht in Erscheinung tritt? Siehst du ihn noch in der Verfassung, bis Januar nächsten Jahres zu regieren?
Well, we know he's not fit to be in this position. We know he's not fit. I mean, the debate on, was it June 27th? The debate between Biden and Trump. Let's just be very honest. That wasn't his worst performance. Okay, he performed worse 2 weeks prior at the G7 summit in Italy. He's had situations where his brain has frozen. He's physically incapable of movement. It has to be guided off a stage. This is all on video. We know that this man is not capable of being president of the United States. So suddenly on June 27th, when he had a bad night, but it wasn't his worst night, everybody's saying, oh, it's horrible. CNN, my phone's exploding, John King said. No, John, this is an orchestrated part of the coup d'etat that the establishment was running. Why do we pretend that we don't know what the truth is? Why are we waiting for Joe Biden to show up so that we can ascertain? We know the man is mentally incapable of serving as the president of the United States on a consistent basis. He may have moments of lucidity where he's aware of his surroundings, but the presidency is a 24-hour-a-day job, 7 days a week. And this is not a 24-hour-a-day, 7-day-a-week president. This is a man in severe physical and mental decline. And maybe what pushed it over is that he had a crisis. We're talking about a rapid decline too. We're not talking about a man who just had a momentary episode. This is not episodic. This is systemic, and it's systemic in the wrong direction. Maybe the man just isn't capable of making a physical appearance at this point in time. Who knows? We don't know, but it doesn't matter. If he can't run, he can't serve. He needs to step aside. He needs to be pushed aside. You say, who controls the nuclear weapons? We know who controls the nuclear weapons. The president never controls the nuclear weapons. The president has a guy running around with a briefcase that enables him to facilitate the command and control procedures necessary to order the launch of the weapons. But on a day-to-day basis, the president has no say over the nuclear weapons. We have a nuclear, weapons establishment. The military has them deployed, maintaining them. We have entire agencies that are responsible for overseeing this. The president, on a day-to-day basis, doesn't have any interaction. So that's not the problem. The problem is the president lost control of the nuclear weapons. The problem is, if we have to use nuclear weapons, is the president capable of the rapid, high-stress decision-making necessary to decide the life and death decision on do we launch or don't? We have protocols in place that are premised on a 15-minute warning in case of a submarine launched ballistic missile attack, or a 30-minute warning premised on a intercontinental ballistic missile attack from land-based missiles. Those protocols might have to be updated given the fact that we now have hypersonic weapons that can close with much quicker. But the bottom line is, if there's ever a crisis and the nuclear suitcase is opened up, the president has a very finite period of time where he is literally pulling out sheets of paper that give him a game plan, tell him who he has to contact, who he needs to coordinate with to make sure that we determine whether a nuclear response is legal under international law, under American law. Is this real? Is this fake? To make sure all the process, for other people to make sure that the president hasn't lost his mind and just decided to nuke everybody for the hell of it. These are what the protocols do. And they require somebody who is competent, who has cognitive thought ability, the ability to function under high pressure. This old man can't do it. This old man has a disease. I'm not a doctor. I'm not going to diagnose this, but we know that there's a disease related to the diminishment of cognitive capacity. We know that. There's not a person out here that can argue otherwise. And that man isn't the person you want when somebody starts handing him the papers, the laminated sheets of paper that tell him who he has to talk to and the things he has to consider. That brain doesn't work. So who's the person that's going to do that now? It ain't Kamala Harris, because she's not the president of the United States. They haven't directed away, said, you're done, Mr. President. She's now the president. By law, it's still that old man with a non-functioning brain. But we know that brain doesn't function. So who's going to be making that call? Do you know the answer? I don't know the answer. The American people don't know the answer. And that's the problem. And yet the Democratic Party is continuing to play stupid games with the lives of not just American citizens, but again, your lives, every German, everybody in the world, because what you want is somebody capable of, in a stressful situation, saying, I am not going to launch right now because the criterion haven't been met. I have concerns about this. You haven't given me the right answers. I am going to hit pause. That's sort of the desired outcome, especially if it was a mistake, misjudgment, miscalculation. Now, if it's not, and it's clear, then, unfortunately, the functioning brain is going to make the decision to launch the missiles and we all die. But we need to hope that if there's a chance of stopping a nuclear war by a functioning brain reviewing the information available and saying no instead of yes, that's a chance we have to be able to take. Who is the person doing that? One of the things we, the people of the United States, are supposed to be considering when we select a president, elect a president on election day is they talk about the 3 o'clock in the morning phone call. Everybody's asleep. Your children are tucked in. The phone rings. It's 3 a.m. There's an emergency somewhere in the world, and the phone's ringing in the White House bedroom. Who's going to pick it up and talk? That's the thing we're supposed to ask ourselves. Then we project in, do we want Donald Trump to be the guy picking up the phone? Or do we want Joe Biden to be the person picking up the phone? The answer is we don't want either of them, but unfortunately, that was the choice we got. But now, do we want Kamala Harris to be the one picking up the phone? These are fair questions that unfortunately don't get the attention that they need. But right now, we know that the person in the White House can't pick up the phone. And when they were asked that question, his handler said, we have a team of people. I didn't vote for your damn team. I didn't vote for him, but people voted for him. 84 million of them apparently voted for him, not for his team. The team doesn't get to make the decision on whether or not we go to nuclear war. And yet that's where we're at right now. This is an absolute breakdown in the democratic institutions of the United States. And it's being done not by Donald Trump and the Republican Party that everybody's called an existential threat to American democracy. It's being done right in front of us by the Democratic Party, by the deep state, by the establishment. This is problematic. I'll just leave it. I was talking to, it's interesting sometimes when you ask other people to evaluate your country, because I'm a very proud American. I love my country. I get very defensive about my country. And so sometimes when people criticize, I immediately counterattack. No, that's not true. America's still great. America's, this, that, and the other thing. And I had a Russian who was a very educated individual, studied in the United States. He said, from the Russian perspective, what's going on in America, the deterioration, resembles the deterioration that was taking place in the Soviet Union during the latter phases of perestroika. And I went, whoa, that's something to think about. It doesn't mean that he's right, but it means that's the perception of people who lived through the latter stages of perestroika. When they look at America today, they don't see a strong country, a unified country, a capable country. They see a country literally in the terminal phases of societal collapse. And given what's going on with the Democratic Party and their selection of Kamala Harris, maybe they're right.
Auf deinen Social-Media-Kanälen ist eine rege Debatte entbrannt über den Sinn oder Unsinn vom Wählen. Das Thema ist so alt wie die bürgerliche Demokratie selbst. Dennoch haben dich einige User damit konfrontiert, dass, wenn der tiefe Staat ohnehin die Kontrolle hat in den Vereinigten Staaten, es überhaupt keinen Unterschied mache, ob man wählt oder wen man wählt. Du hingegen argumentierst in die andere Richtung. Kannst du bitte deinen Standpunkt erläutern? Warum siehst du es als deine Pflicht an, zu wählen?
Well, one, shame on you for reading my tweets. Two, no, look, I think what triggered this is an account that is not an American account, making a reference that, if you vote, you're voting for genocide, you're voting for this, you're voting for that, and that. So therefore voting is a crime. You shouldn't vote in America. And I took umbrage to that because the way our system sets the rules upon which this country is governed and operates. And one of the key aspects of a constitution is that the rules protect the minority, tyranny of the majority. See, under strict democracy, if you have a majority, then that's what happens. But here we have rules, we have laws that say no. For instance, freedom of speech. You can't get a majority of people that say, because Scott Ritter has decided to speak out against the war in Iraq because he claims there are no weapons of mass destruction, because we have 56% of the people that believe there are weapons of mass destruction, we get to silence Scott Ritter. No, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, freedom of association. We have freedoms, and the Constitution ostensibly protects these freedoms. So we're not a pure democracy, and a lot of people don't understand that distinction. But we do get to elect the people who manage this constitutional republic on our behalf. We get to elect our representatives in Congress and the Senate, in the White House, and on local government, the state level as well. And this is done through a democratic process where the majority of the people select. So if we have somebody running for Senate and 5,000 people vote for one person and 5,001 vote for the other, the person that gets 5,001 votes goes to the Senate. Votes count. Votes matter. Now, there are people who believe that you exercise your democratic prerogative by showing up at the poll in November. And this year it's November 5th. And that the best way to make your vote count is to show up and vote. But by then, it's really too late. By then, somebody else has put names on a ballot, and all you're doing is choosing people that other people have put up there. You weren't part of that process. I'm against that. See, I believe that votes need to be earned, not given. I believe that democracy is a 365-day-year responsibility, not something you exercise on one day in November. I believe that, each American has to make the issues that he or she believes in relevant, and do their best to leverage, their desire for an issue, their support for an issue, into a broader support, so that on election day, more people who believe in your issue vote the way you believe they should, so that your candidate gets into higher office. This also means that we have to get involved at the local level. We have to get involved at the state level, the national level. We can't let parties do the selection for us. We need to, take control of the parties. This is a full-time job. Not many Americans are up to it, but that's what I believe in, and that's what I fight for. And I will push back vociferously against anybody who seeks to nullify that aspect of American citizenship, because I view the best American citizen to be not only the informed citizen, but the informed citizen who then empowers themselves to take the action necessary to achieve the outcomes they want. And in this system of the United States, this constitutional republic, we do that through the vote. And if you're attacking the vote, then you're attacking America. You're attacking the very essence of America. You're attacking what makes America work. You can't take the democracy aspect out of the equation and have America work. It becomes dysfunctional. And most of the people that attack the vote are people who are looking for the violent disruption of America. They're looking for the nullification of the current system. They are encouraging revolution and civil war. I don't, because, see, I took an oath to uphold and defend the Constitution of the United States of America against all enemies, foreign and domestic. And I was willing and am willing to give my life in defense of that Constitution. So if you're promoting revolution, you're promoting civil war, you're fighting against the Constitution, you are my enemy. Now, I'm not in the military. I don't get to close with and destroy you through firepower and maneuver, but I will use whatever mechanisms I have to nullify you, because you are attacking the very essence of my country. I know America's got a lot of problems. Hell, I'm one of the biggest critics of America out there. That's my right. That's my duty. That's my responsibility as an American citizen, is to point out what we're doing wrong and try and fix it. And that's the important part. And try and fix it. And the only mechanism available to the American people to fix it is to elect better people to represent them in higher office. So if you take on the vote in America, you're taking me on, then that's your right. But don't be surprised when I come back at you, because I'm not going to be one of these passive people that lets you kick America when it's down. America is down. And my job, and I hope the job of all my fellow American citizens, is to help get America back up and get it on the right track. We do that through the processes of democracy that are manifested in the vote. But the vote itself can't just be a singular event. It has to be part of an entire systemic approach to taking control of the democratic processes, so that we don't just elect somebody that's already been selected for us, that we are selecting the people that we wish to elect, that we are involved at the grassroots, that we know who we're voting for, and those people, we know that those people represent the ideals, the values that we espouse as individuals.
Jetzt könnte man dich natürlich fragen, wen du wählen wirst. Die Demokraten mit Harris als Präsidentin, die Republikaner mit Trump als Präsidenten und J.D. Vance als Vizepräsidenten oder vielleicht doch Robert Kennedy. Das machen wir nicht, denn es gilt ja das Recht auf eine geheime Wahl. Aber vielleicht kannst du skizzieren, welche Politik die USA unter einer Präsidentin Harris verfolgen würden. Schon jetzt wurde bekannt, dass Harris die entscheidenden Positionen wie den Außenminister, den Verteidigungsminister und den nationalen Sicherheitsberater umbesetzen würde. Andersherum, wie würden die USA mit Trump und Vance an der Spitze agieren? Und müssen wir über Kennedy überhaupt sprechen als mögliche Option?
Well, first of all, let's just start off that RFK Jr. is a possible option. I mean, whether I support him or not is irrelevant. He's an option. And if you believe in what he's saying, you should vote for him. I mean, that's the thing. That's the beauty of this system, is that people can run for office that I don't agree with, and but other people may support them, and then the democratic process kicks in, and whoever can get the most votes becomes ostensible. But now people say, "Well, Scott, that's not true," and you can have a president not win the popular vote. Read the damn Constitution. I'm sick and tired of explaining the Constitution to ignorant people. The president is not elected by popular vote on a national level. This is the United States of America, and the United States of America elects a president through a process of popular vote at the state level that generates delegates based upon populations of the state. These delegates are part of the electoral college, and they come together and vote. That's why when we're looking at election night, we're looking at who can get 270 electoral votes. It's been that way for a while. And why suddenly people are going, well, he didn't win the popular vote. It's not a popular vote contest. So why are you bringing it up? Popular votes for a senator, a state senator. But we are a constitutional republic, a republic of states. And the states have come together through the Constitution and agreed upon a system of electing representatives to govern us at the national level. I'm tired of people misrepresenting what American democracy is. And I also am tired of people, because they don't get the outcome they want, to suddenly say they want to change everything and make it about a popular vote instead of the electoral college. People say it's antiquated. Find me a better system that represents that gives value to the states. Because if you go to a purely popular vote, you're telling the 50 states of the United States of America, you don't matter. You don't count. You're telling every state out there that if you don't live in California, New York, or Texas, you don't matter because, that's where, major population centers are. And if you win those centers, then middle America doesn't count. But by having an electoral college, which gives weighted value to each state, when you're looking for who can get the most electoral votes, each state now matters. Each state counts. It can come down to one state making the difference in terms of the vote totals. That's an empowerment device. I'm not against the electoral college. I actually think it works very fine. But first of all, who am I going to vote for? None of your damn business. It's called a secret ballot for a reason. And here's the other reason why. It's July. If I told you who I'm going to vote for, then I don't stand for anything. I just gave my vote away. I gave it to you for free. You didn't earn it. You don't have to do anything. I'm done. I'm going to vote for so-and-so. Screw it. You're done, man. I don't have to care about anything you care about. In the months to come, when I'm now trying to convince people to vote for me, I don't have to convince you anymore because you already committed. Your issues are finished. I'm going to do something else. And now maybe your issues get dropped off. Every American should withhold their vote until election day so that the candidates have to earn that vote the entire time they're running for office. What Americans need to do is make the issues that they care about, known, and then to put pressure on the candidates. I will tell you that I'm a single issue person on this election. And that issue is nuclear war, peace, disarmament, all wrapped up together. If you prevent a nuclear war, you're promoting peace. And to prevent a nuclear war, you have to have a framework of arms control. That's it. And so I will spend the time between now and November doing my best to put pressure on all the candidates to articulate their vision of how they want to stop a nuclear war, their vision of how they want to promote peace, their vision of how they want to achieve arms control. I can't do that by myself. I'm just one guy. So if I'm just out there screaming by myself, it doesn't work. I have to find a way to leverage this idea into a movement that has meaning. Now, the interesting thing about this election is that it's a very close election. It's going to come down to, again, tens of thousands of votes in specific, battleground states. So if I can find a way to gather together a couple 100,000, maybe 1 million like-minded individuals who say, this is the vote for me, and I can get them concentrated in the swing states, I now have leverage. And I'm going to try that. On September 28th, we're doing what we call Operation Dawn, asking the American people, what would you do to save democracy? What would you do to save America? What would you do to save the world? By leveraging your vote in November, DAWN, Operation Dawn. On September 28th, we're doing it. It's going to be a constellation of podcasts. We're bringing together, experts and analysts and entertainers for a full day of no nuke focus. And if we can get enough committed people to commit their vote to this cause, saying that this vote doesn't go to a Democrat, a Republican, or an independent, this vote goes to the candidate that best articulates a policy that meets these standards. Let's say I get 50,000 commitments in Michigan. Now, from September 28th to November, I can go to Michigan and I can run advertisements that say, Dear Kamala Harris, Dear Donald Trump, Dear RFK Jr., Dear Jill Stein, you want to win Michigan? These are the 50,000 votes that are going to do it for you, because this state is evenly divided. You have 50,000 votes right now that don't have any letter attached to them. They are focused on one issue and one issue. You want to win Michigan? Tell me your policy about preventing a nuclear war. And imagine if we could do that in Pennsylvania too. We could do that in Ohio. New York is now supposed to be a battleground state. We can do that in New York. Let's say we can take it up to the other closely held states. Wow. Did you hear what I just did? I made democracy relevant again, didn't I? I made a vote count, didn't I? I made the will of the people manifest, didn't I? So for all you people out there telling me that votes don't count, go to hell. Votes do count. They're the only thing that does count in this election. And I'm going to make sure my vote counts on election night by holding the people who are running to office accountable for their policy visions. You don't get my vote. You have to earn my vote. And then I will cast my vote accordingly.
Die US-Wahlen werfen schon jetzt ihre Schatten voraus in der Geopolitik. So scheint sich in der Ukraine plötzlich eine gewisse Bereitschaft, über den Frieden zu sprechen, auszubreiten. Präsident Wladimir Selenskyj bekundete jüngst, der Krieg müsse so schnell wie möglich beendet werden. Angeblich geht es ihm darum, Menschenleben zu schonen. Und auch der ukrainische Außenminister Dmytro Kuleba ließ ähnliche Töne verkünden bei seinem Besuch in China. Das kann auch mit der Sorge vor einem möglichen Wahlsieg von Trump zusammenhängen. So hatte Trump wiederholt betont, den Ukraine-Krieg umgehend beenden zu wollen, wenn er wieder US-Präsident sei. Sein Sohn Donald Trump Jr. hatte Selenskyj auch vor kurzem als geldgeilen Bettler verspottet. Woher kommt dieser plötzliche Wille von Selenskyj, den Krieg zu beenden? Und welchen Einfluss hat eine mögliche Wahl von Trump darauf? Könnte Trump als US-Präsident den Ukraine-Konflikt beenden?
There's only one person and one country in the world that matters when it comes to Ukraine, and that person is Vladimir Putin. That country is Russia. Listen to what Zelensky is saying. Listen what Kuleba is saying. They're not asking for peace. They're asking for Russian surrender. They're saying that they're ready to negotiate, but only if Russia is willing to accept their terms. They're saying that Russia must be defeated, that Russia must concede its defeat. So this is horse manure. There's no substance behind this. What they're doing is wisely playing to Donald Trump. Donald Trump, the egomaniac narcissist that he is, thinks that he can pick up the phone and end this war. Now, he has two phone calls that he wants to make. One to Zelensky saying, you need to accept peace. Zelensky's preempting that right now, saying, I'm ready for peace, man. I'm ready for peace. Don't even make the phone call, Donald. I'm ready for peace. You got to make that other phone call. And therein lies the problem. Because the other phone call requires him to call Vladimir Putin and tell Putin, for instance, one of the things that has been put out there is the potential Trump plan that, hey, Vlad, you get Crimea, as if Russia needs America's permission to get Crimea. I mean, Russia's got Crimea. Crimea is Russia. So Putin's going to be going, excuse me? Yeah, I'm going to give you Crimea. Excuse me, Donald, I own Crimea. I'm going to give it to you, but you got to give back Zaporizhia, Donetsk, Lugansk, and Kherson. And Vlad's go, no, Don, let me explain it to you. That's Russia too. And what are you talking about? No, you have to do that or I'm going to flood Ukraine with weapons. Did you hear what I just said? Or I'm going to flood Ukraine with weapons. And Ukraine's going, flood away, baby, flood away. Bring it all on. Give it all to us. That's what's happening here. All right. This isn't a call for peace. This is the stupidity of a Donald Trump and the stupidity of a Donald Trump presidency. This man's not seeking to bring an end to the conflict in Ukraine. He's seeking to stroke his own ego, to be a peacemaker, but the peace that he envisions is totally out of step with the reality on the ground. Russia is not interested in peace. Russia is interested in eliminating the NATO presence in Ukraine, in eliminating the Banderist presence in Ukraine, in creating the conditions of peace for the Russian people, both in Russia and in Ukraine. This war doesn't end with Ukraine governing major Russian populations. I heard Lavrov say that the other day. Now, he didn't say it straight up about that means Odessa, Kharkov, Dnipropetrovsk, Nikolaev, maybe Sumy are now going to be Russian, but that's what he meant. See, Ukraine missed their window of opportunity. Vladimir Putin put a peace proposal on the table before the NATO summit and said, this is it. It's the best deal you're ever going to get. It's a good deal. Take it. Because if you don't take it, the next deal will be much worse, and it won't be through negotiation, but rather Russia dictating the terms of unconditional surrender to Ukraine. Ukraine's looking at the total collapse right now. They're collapsing militarily, economically, socially. And the only thing that's going to save them is if NATO either directly intervenes, which isn't really a possibility, or if the United States and NATO turn on the spigots and just flood Ukraine with weaponry and resources, which is what they're going for. But people need to be clear about this. There is no Ukrainian peace plan. It doesn't exist. The Ukrainian plan is to trick Donald Trump into thinking his ego can solve this crisis, commit him to a course of action that will inevitably lead to the Americans flooding Ukraine with weapons. But here's where the Ukrainians get it wrong. We don't have any weapons to flood Ukraine with. So it's the end of Ukraine no matter what. But the sad part of it is, and we come back to my concern about nuclear war, that Donald Trump is going to be humiliated very early on, because if he gets elected, he thinks that he can make the magic phone call before he gets inaugurated. I will solve this problem before I'm sworn in as president, he said. And he won't. He will be humiliated by the Russians. The Russians might not even take his phone call. Why would they? He's not president. Why would they take his call? He can't negotiate on behalf of the United States. It's a violation of the Logan Act. He doesn't get to run around and pretend he's president. He has to get sworn in to be president. And so it's going to be humiliating for him. And Donald Trump's not the kind of guy that gets humiliated and then, sheepishly says, oh, I better change my way. He's going to come in now. He's going to try and be large and in charge. He's going to put more sanctions on Russia. He's going to be building up American forces in Europe. He's going to be leaning forward to make sure that Russia knows America is not to be trifled with. And then we're going to have a nuclear war and we're all going to die. And we can thank the orange-faced idiot that became the president of the United States because the Republican Party didn't have the wherewithal to elect somebody better.
Glaubt man den Meldungen, scheinen die russischen Streitkräfte gerade große Geländegewinne zu erzielen im Donbass und an weiteren Stellen der ukrainisch-russischen Frontlinie. Die ukrainische Armee soll sich stellenweise unkontrolliert zurückziehen. Wie ist deine Wahrnehmung des aktuellen Geschehens an der Front? Wie stark entfaltet sich gerade die russische Offensive? Und passen die aktuellen Ereignisse zu den Aussagen des russischen Generalmajors Abdi Aludinov, dem Kommandeur der Achmat-Spezialkräfte, dass die Militäroperation bis Ende dieses Jahres abgeschlossen sein wird?
Well, I think you know this because you've apparently shown a proclivity to read my social media and listen to things I said. So you know that I've met Abdi Aludinov and I know him personally and I hold him in high regard. The man that I met was a very serious military professional. He's not the sort of person to go around bragging. There's a lot of people that dismiss Chechen soldiers and Chechen commanders, as they call them, TikTok soldiers. Abdi Aludinov is not a TikTok leader. I don't say that the Chechens are either. I disagree with that characterization, but this is a very serious military man who understands war. He understands the war in Ukraine better than just about anybody else. And so I put a lot of weight on his words. He's a military commander, though, and he will acknowledge that the war is an extension of politics by other means. So while he has a military assessment that if he were in control of all the military factors would probably play out the way he sees it, politics does get involved. And sometimes politicians put the brakes on certain military things, emphasize other things. For instance, does Vladimir Putin want to be dealing with the collapse of Ukraine in October of this year? Because that is one potential scenario. But when you take a look at Vladimir Putin speaking at the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, at the plenary session, at his two major press events, he didn't lead off by talking about Ukraine and the danger posed by Ukraine, the need to confront the Western Ukraine. He led off about the economy, about BRICS. And BRICS is going to be meeting in Kazan in October. And I don't imagine putting all this emphasis on BRICS and the role that BRICS is going to play in the future about creating a multilateral world to challenge American hegemony and the rules-based international order, that he wants to see all of that undermined by the collapse of Ukraine in October, which is a real potential. I mean, if you take a look at the trajectory on the battlefield right now, the Ukrainian army is withdrawing because they can't hold the ground anymore because they don't have the troops. The precious reserves that they do have been committed. They've been annihilated. There's nothing to replace them. And so where they used to just dig in and fight and then do counterattacks, they don't. They have to withdraw now. And you see the Russians putting continuous pressure on a number of points between 6 and 11 points along the entire battlefield where the Ukrainians can't stop them. They don't have the resources. And this is only going to get worse because the Russians are taking out a brigade a day of Ukrainian forces. Ukrainians don't have replacement brigades. So every day, today is worse than yesterday. Tomorrow will be worse than today. And that's the way it's going to get. There's no, where they go, oh, there's a light at the end of the tunnel. No, that's an oncoming train that's going to run you over. It's called the Russian military, led by people like Abdialadonov, who are going to slaughter you, butcher you, and, bring a violent end to this fighting. So that's the direction we're headed on. The Ukrainian army has lost the ability for sustained combat cohesion along the entire line of contact. And the Russians are putting pressure on the entire line of contact. And where the Ukrainians can resist, and we've seen them, the Ukrainians, the perception that, Russia's advancing everywhere, it isn't true. There are places where the Russians try to advance and they don't, because the Ukrainians push them back. There are places where the Ukrainians launch a limited counterattack and push the Russians off of positions that they've recently captured. But those occurrences are very rare right now. Right now, the Ukrainians can slow down the Russian advance by flooding a zone with FPV drones, artillery, HIMARS, things of that nature. But the Russians have the solution for that. If you flood the zone, Russia will flood back. And next thing you know, Russia gets the upper hand and they begin pushing back. And Ukraine's expended a lot of resources that they don't have anything to replace them with. And that's what we're seeing on the battlefield right now, is the slow but inevitable total collapse of the Ukrainian armed forces, their ability to resist, which is one of the reasons why you see Zelensky now throwing caution to the wind and saying, I'm ready to negotiate. I'm ready to negotiate, because he needs Donald Trump to make that phone call as soon as possible to Vladimir Putin. But what he doesn't understand is it's going to get the exact opposite result. One, the American people aren't going to tolerate Donald Trump opening the floodgates of weapons to Ukraine. We have too many problems here at home that need to be addressed. We don't have infinite resources. We have a situation where General Christopher Cavoli, the commander of U.S. forces, commander of NATO ground forces in Europe, has just come out and said what nobody else apparently wants to admit, that the Russians have gotten stronger and they're going to get even stronger. That this war has not weakened Russia, it's angered Russia. And when this war ends, and it will end, what you're going to have is a very angry Russia with a very large, capable military. That's the reality. And that's what Donald Trump should be, Kamala Harris should be doing the same thing as well. How do you mitigate the consequences of an angry Russia with a large military? And the answer is stop getting them angry and do your best to promote the reduction of emphasis on military buildup as opposed to promote military buildup.